All right, folks, let's go ahead and talk about your Section 2 assignment. This is essentially an extension of the Section 1 assignment that we did earlier this semester. It's part 2 of your campaign proposal. This is due April 6th, a Monday at 11:59 p.m. Given what everyone's been going through in light of COVID-19, I did change a few things, so make sure that you guys have the most recently updated assignment description. You can find that on Canvas where it states assignments, and then it should say section 2. You can also find it in next week's module, week 13, there as well. All right, so section 2 is going to be 13 to 15 pages, and you will submit this as a group document. Remember, your group leader is the one who will submit this. If for whatever reason this person cannot submit it, make sure that you guys email me so I know who's submitting it on behalf of the group. There's a lot of application in this assignment in terms of what we've learned in lecture. So it's not a situation where you're just gathering information from outside sources. Now is really the opportunity to apply what we've talked about in class in light of some of your ideas that you have for the client. So the first thing that you guys are going to do for this assignment is talk about your key publics, the groups that you want to target in this campaign. And for each section, within each section of this assignment, I tried to designate approximately how long it will be. So for targeting your publics, you're going to talk about them for about two pages or so. And the first thing that you're going to do is discuss the two key publics that you feel like are most important for the client in reference to your campaign. Make sure when you guys go to talk about your key publics that you order it in, or that you organize that description in order of who you deem to be the most important for your campaign. So let's say that you're targeting, young professionals in the age range of 25 to 35. If you feel like they're the more important public in your campaign, make sure that you describe them first. And in terms of what I mean by describing your key publics, you're going to do what we did one time in class activity that we completed earlier this semester. You're going to talk about their demographic and psychographic information. Make sure that you guys are using the websites that I provided to you all on Canvas in terms of finding that demographic and psychographic information. Stay away from stereotyping, right? So make sure that whatever information that you're using to describe and analyze your key publics, that it's, verified in some type of outside resource, whether that's secondary research or maybe someone else's market research that you found. You don't want to make assumptions about your key publics without information there. And then also in your description, make sure that you convey why are they so important to this campaign? How are they important to the business, to the client? How do they influence, this organization? And then what are some appropriate communication channels that we should use in order to effectively reach these key publics? So that's targeting your publics, that section. Then you guys are going to go on to discuss your objective statements. Once more, objective statements seek to describe what kind of impact you want to have on each of your key publics. So you're going to create about 2 to 3 objective statements for each key public. Since you guys will have just 2 key publics for this campaign proposal, you're going to have a minimum of 4 objective statements total, but no more than 6, again, because we're looking at 2 to 3 objective statements for each key public. And also as a reminder, make sure that you guys are writing objective statements that are in the category of awareness, acceptance, or action. So in other words, do you want to have an impact on the audience's understanding or their familiarity of the client's business? Do you want to impact their attitudes, about the business? Or do you want to impact their behavior? Do you want them to purchase more products from the business? Now, I will say I'm not looking for a specific amount of awareness objectives, for instance, or action objectives. It's really largely depending upon your campaign goal and how you envision, accomplishing this campaign goal. Objective statements are very, very important, even though in terms of length, they're not going to take up too much space in this campaign proposal. Make sure that you guys are using your notes as a guide because there is a formula in terms of how to write objective statements. So first you want to designate what type of objective statement is it. So to have an impact of awareness, action, or acceptance. So what does that look like? We specifically want to draw attention to the fact that our client is holding an event, right? And so make sure also that you mention that key public within the objective statement. There are examples in your textbook, and also more importantly, I should say, in your notes. If you are confused about how to write objective statements, or you just want me to take a look at them, make sure you send me an email. We can set up a conference call from there. In terms of more technical things, make sure that you write your objective statements using bullet points. I'm not asking you guys to describe your objective statements in a lot of detail. Again, these statements are going to be really, really short, no more than about 2 sentences or so. And more importantly, make sure that your objective statements are in line with your campaign goal. I cannot stress that enough. So the next thing that you guys are going to do is discuss your market research results. So unlike section 1, when you guys were just, talking about your market research plan, you're going to go a step further and actually provide those results. Now, again, given what we're going through today, or not today, but in general, I'm not expecting you guys to have, for example, survey data from 100 different folks, right? So just keep that in mind as we're, doing this assignment here. But I am expecting you guys to have something and to be able to provide, really good interpretation to that data. And again, I'm not just interested in your findings in terms of you reporting those findings. Make sure that you provide meaning to those findings. So for example, so what that, 50% of your focus group, is aware of the client's business. What does that mean? How is that relevant to your campaign? And more importantly, how will that really benefit the client? Why would that be interesting information that they would need to know? Make sure that when you guys go to talk about your market research, that you do it in light of your key publics. Make sure that you actually have data over your key publics. I cannot stress that enough as well. Because if you don't, it kind of is, like I put here, counterproductive to present data over people that you're not even targeting in your campaign. And then last thing here in terms of for market research, make sure you include, your raw data for your survey, for instance. For your focus group, you can just provide general reports. Content analysis, you need to provide the code book, all of that, and your findings in an appendix. It's not going to be included in the page count, however. So that's going to come at the very, very end of this assignment. Then we're going to go ahead and talk about our strategies. So your strategies, again, are the approach that you're going to use in order to accomplish your overall campaign goal. Now, your strategies should be justified in light of your market research findings. So it's not enough just to say that you're going to use a proactive media relations strategy. What research, essentially, what market research or even secondary research proves that that type of strategy will work in light of the key publics? When you go to talk about your strategies, make sure you talk about it in light of also your key publics. So for example, proactive media relations strategy, and then put a hyphen, young professionals age 25 to 35. So designate who you're trying to target within this strategy. By default, in terms of, because I get this question a lot from students, how many strategies should we have? By default, you're going to have 2, a minimum of 2, I should say, because you have 2 publics. And you want to make sure that you're using different strategies, right, for each key public, because, since they are so different in nature, or they should be different in nature. And then after your strategies, you're going to go through your tactics. So this is going to take up a pretty decent chunk of section 2. You're going to discuss what do those strategies exactly look like. Those are your tactics, the tangibles here. I will say your tactics have to be described in a lot of detail. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you want to put on an event. That's fine, but when is that event going to take place? How are you going to promote that event? What are the logistics of it, right? So who's going to work that event? Once more, how long is it going to take place? How are you going to ensure engagement at that event and even prior to that event, so that you can, ensure some type of turnout at the event? So go through in a lot of detail that implementation process, because if these are questions that the client is going to have, it's not enough, again, to say that we're going to put on an event for you, or we're going to post, Instagram stories. Take them through that process. Why this particular Instagram story, for instance? How are you going to make it engaging? How long should we go through this social media strategy in terms of like Instagram stories, for instance? So again, I know I'm kind of being a little repetitive here, but make sure you guys go into a lot of detail in terms of how exactly are we going to implement this. And then after you describe your tactics, oh, I'm sorry, one more thing in like your tactics, again, like the strategies, by default, you're gonna have a minimum of 2 tactics. You can have definitely a lot more than that, but just make sure you designate who you're trying to target in those tactics in the subheading as well. Then evaluation. So we just recently talked about this in lecture. So you need to provide an evaluative research plan. So how essentially are you going to track whether or not your campaign is successful? Is it going according to plan? You're going to do this by basically talking about how you're going to evaluate the objective statement. So in other words, how are you going to know, for instance, whether or not you increased awareness about, the client? Talk about that. Are you going to use a post-campaign survey? Are you going to use a post-campaign focus group? Are you going to use a content analysis, a clipping service? So go through that for each objective statement. That's what I mean by evaluative research. What are we evaluating? Our objective statements. When do we do that? Throughout the entire campaign, as soon as we implement those tactics. And then more importantly, how are we going to do that? Through those methodologies that we discussed in light of the evaluative research lecture. And again, that largely depends upon the objective statement type. And then just a couple more things here. We have the budget. So this is going to be largely dependent upon your tactics that you're proposing. So once more, I use the event example a lot, but that tends to be a popular tactic that students use. If you want to put on an event for the client, how much is that going to cost? So how much, if you're serving food, how much is the food going to cost? How much is labor going to cost? Because obviously someone has to work it and has to get paid to work this event. How long is that going to take place? So that's going to also determine labor cost. If you're promoting this event, how much is that, advertising or promotional costs going to, cost? Excuse me. In terms of the budget, since, there's a lot going on again, I'm going to give you guys a budget because both, clients have really yet to clarify their budget for me. So I would say cap your budget at $2,000. And then if for whatever reason we hear something different from the client, then we'll go ahead and, adjust from there. So once more, for each tactic, you should tell me how much is it going to cost? And then timeline, how long is this campaign going to take place? How long will it, last? And what I mean by, how long it will last is not necessarily the campaign proposal process, what we're in right now. More so, let's say that the client decides to go with your PR agency and, you guys go through this campaign proposal process. They give you the go ahead. Now from there, how long would it take for the campaign as soon as you implement that first tactic? So on average, a communication campaign can last anywhere from about a month to about 3 months. So I would say definitely make sure that you make sure that your campaign is no longer than about 3 months or so, unless it really takes, a longer effort here. Unrelated, well, yes, related to this assignment, but unrelated to the actual content of it. Make sure that you guys turn in your peer evaluation for this assignment, peer evaluation number 2, that's in a separate folder. It's very, very important. As you guys know, I take those peer evaluations seriously, but also take into consideration some of the constraints that we're going through in your peer evaluations as well. And that'll be due on April 6th at 11:59 p.m. So that's your section 2 assignment. Like I said, it's a lot more application than section 1. This is really your opportunity to propose ideas to the client in light of your market research, in light of any research essentially that you've conducted. If you do have any questions about this assignment, make sure that you're being proactive and reach out to me, and I will try to assist you as best as possible.